From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
Our hiatus is over with. Welcome back to another episode of the Wildcast podcast. Justin Spears here with Alec White. It's been a minute, Alec, since we've got together in studio at the Arizona Daily Star to record a podcast, but no shortage of content. I mean, what's happened over the last few weeks, we're going to have a fun podcast.
We are. It's been a while since we've been in here doing a podcast, but man, lots are happening around the Arizona sports scene for U of A, around just Arizona as a whole. I mean, it's crazy. We expected a slower summer. I mean, Arizona baseball was kind of in the middle of the road in the Pac-12. They were losing some steam in the conference race. Had a really good Pac-12 tournament, I think.
Yeah.
Couple wins. Ended ASU's season. Had a really fun tweet about it. And then Arizona softball making the Women's College World Series out of nowhere. Finished last in the conference. Made the NCAA tournament. And now Caitlin Lowe and the Wildcats have a chance to win a national championship.
Before we dive into that, just want to remind everyone that the Wildcast is thriving on all podcasting platforms, but please, we greatly appreciate it if you subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends. Leave a 5-star rating. Leave a comment on what you think about the podcast. Those always help us out on those platforms. So please, please, please comment, subscribe, review the Wildcast podcast on Apple, Spotify, or other podcasting platforms. And if you want this podcast along with stories from the Arizona Daily Star, videos, all sorts of digital content, then download the Wildcaster app for free off the App Store and Google Play. Doesn't cost a dime. You don't need a subscription to the Arizona Daily Star. There are some stories where you need a subscription, but you can get those on Tucson.com. But everything on the Wildcaster is all free. All you got to do is just download the Wildcaster off the App Store and Google Play. So Alec just touched on it right there. We're going to get into some Arizona softball and Arizona baseball to lead this thing. But later on in the podcast, we're going to get into the NBA draft process. What the hell is Dalen Terry going to do? Because at the time that we are recording this podcast, it is May 31st. Now, over the next couple of days, we're going to be figuring out what's going to happen with Dalen Terry regarding his future. Is he going to stay in the draft, or is he going to come out and rejoin the Arizona Wildcats for next season? And then we'll also talk about NBA finals, because 4 Lute Olson Arizona Wildcats are competing against each other. So it's a good time to be following U of A sports. But Alec, you said it, Arizona softball made it to the Women's College World Series in Caitlin Lowe's first season. And I saw this bonkers stat earlier that it just blew my mind to let you know how kind of historic this run is for Arizona. So Arizona softball Twitter account, they tweeted this out earlier today. Since the NCAA softball tournament expanded past 16 teams in 1988, Caitlin Lowe is the only coach to lead its team to the Women's College World Series in her first year as a head coach at any level. She's also the first ever female to accomplish it in Women's College World Series history. So when you think about the history behind this year for Arizona, it's mind-boggling to me, Alec, because like you said, we were talking about this team just having a run-of-the-mill average year. This was the year where Caitlin Lowe, it was a rebuilding year for Arizona softball. Mike Andrea retired last year. The greatest softball coach of all time stepped away from the game. And on top of that, essentially the entire roster all left. All the great skill players that Arizona had all graduated. So for Caitlin Lowe's first season, and it's no offense to the current softball team, but compared to last year's team, this was a very average hand that Caitlin Lowe was dealt. And you saw it during conference play. They started off 0-8. So they started off 0-8 in Pac-12 play. Now they're the one of the last 8 teams remaining in the postseason, which is truly remarkable. But I always said it, Alec, that Arizona softball got into the postseason because they are a brand name. If there's any bubble team that you're going to include in your field,
That's not unrealistic.
You're going to include a brand name. Just like, hey, in basketball, if there's a bubble team, if there are 2 bubble teams, one of them is Duke, one of them is Richmond, who do you think the NCAA is going to put in the NCAA tournament? They're going to put in Duke. Mm-hmm. So I think that Arizona got in specifically because of their name. Like, if you look at their season, they had a very not so good, very pedestrian regular season. One of the worst teams in the Pac-12. And lo and behold, it looks like the Pac-12 is just an absolute juggernaut because the Pac-12 thrived in the postseason, and now you got Arizona in the Women's College World Series.
Yeah, prior to this season, I've been doing research, as I've been covering this team. Since Mike Candrea took over in, 30-some years ago, 35 years ago.
35.
No Arizona team that had a losing record in conference play and 20 regular season losses total. This Arizona team fit both of those molds. No Arizona team had made it past the NCAA regionals.
Wow.
This is the first team in Arizona softball history to lose 20 regular season games, have a losing record in conference play, and also make the Women's College World Series.
Wow. Man, that's crazy, man.
So you had a great stat. I tried to up the ante there.
Yeah. And I mean, you watch this team all season long. What's the biggest strength of this team? Like, what's the one thing that they're going to be able to hang their hat on and end up winning a championship, if they will?
It'll be because of the home run ball.
Really? Not pitching?
This team was a really bad pitching team during the regular season.
Okay. They turned it up all of a sudden.
They did. They ranked 7th in the Pac, or tied for second to last. So there's 9 softball teams in the Pac-12. So they finished tied for second to last at number 7 for ERA during the regular season. Hannah Bowen, she allowed a career-high 7 earned runs against Kentucky in February. After that, she didn't pitch for 2 weeks because she had an injury. Came back, had a run of 6 straight starts where she allowed 4 or fewer runs, 6 straight times. Then after that, it was the start of conference play and 8 straight losses, like you mentioned. Devin Netz, brother of Dawson Netz on the Arizona baseball team, she was the second starter on the team, had a slow start to the season, but then when Bowen went down, kind of filled in. And then Pac-12 play, Netz was pitching poorly, and they could just never figure out the rotation. It wasn't until April that both pitchers started to come around and turn a corner. This is the first time all year in Pac-12 play, going back to the regional, it was the first time in Pac-12 play that both 2 different Arizona pitchers threw back-to-back shutouts against a Power 5 team. Had not been happening all year. So this was a pretty pedestrian. They weren't awful pitching, but it was pretty average, slightly below average compared to what we've expected from an Arizona softball team. You think of teams in the past with Danielle O'Toole and Jenny Finch and some of those high-level pitchers. This team doesn't have that at all.
Yeah.
So pitching was a concern. Hitting, this team was top 10 in the country in home runs. Allie Skaggs tied for the lead in Pac-12 for home runs at 22 during the regular season, was left off the all Pac-12 first team. She was an all Pac-12 second team for whatever reason. This team has come alive with their bats. You rewatch the Mississippi State series. Carly Scoopin, Izzy Pacho hitting some of those big home runs. This is a team where the formula for them is pitch well and get a couple, 1 or 2 key home runs a game, and they're going to be golden. If they did that during the regular season, we would have been talking about Arizona as a national title contender. But the pitching was just so inconsistent that they were scoring 5-6 runs a game on offense, but then they were giving up 8 or 9.
Yeah.
So it turned into some blowouts.
Is this team young?
I
know Carly Scoopin's a second-year player.
They're actually very young.
So this is kind of like the groundwork for what could be something special here in the next year or so.
Yeah. Hannah Bowen is going to be graduating. She's the top starter.
Yeah.
But they have some freshman talent coming in on the mound. And then Peanut Martinez is the other senior. But she hasn't played a whole lot in right field because it's gone to Paige Dimmler, who's a freshman, and she's an all Pac-12 freshman.
Yeah.
So everybody else on the roster that you're seeing outside of Bowen, and Peanut Martinez, and then Bailey Thompson, the DH/backup catcher. Everybody else is either a freshman, sophomore, or junior.
Yeah.
So they're going to be loaded, and it's only the start of things to come, I think.
I think Taryn Mowat is going to have a nice little sit-down conversation with Hannah Bowen going into this, because it's like, hey, I led Arizona to the last national championship in 2007, and we did it pretty much on my arm. Because Taryn Mowat, I think she pitched like over 1,000 pitches in like a week span. And I know, Hannah Bowen's going to have a little bit of insurance there with Devin Ness being back, but I think Taryn Mowat's going to have a nice little motivational conversation with Hannah Bowen, because it's like, you're the ace pitcher, you're our number one pitcher. We're going to need you big time in Oklahoma City, and it's just so awesome to see that a year where people are like, oh man, because a lot of people I monitor Twitter, you do too. A lot of people are like, oh man, Caitlin Lowe.
Did they botch this hire?
Yeah. Did they only hire her because she's a former player and she was right there? Is this? I think she's looking like she's the right hire, and she's got a great staff around her. Like I said, Taryn Mowat being her pitching coach. It's definitely a group effort, but for Caitlin Lowe to kind of rally her troops right now and in this moment, I think it's something that you can appreciate.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think you can see how much Caitlin cares about this team and this group, and about being the head coach, crying during the post game interview, can't contain the emotions, because this team had a really challenging season. I mean, imagine having the expectations of this season, taking over for Mike Candrea, and you lose 8 games in a row during softball season, and probably a good at least half of them, I think 5 or 6 were at home.
Yeah,
like, you're getting shut out, blown out on your home field.
They got run ruled by ASU.
Run ruled by ASU in your own stadium. Yeah. That's tough. So I think just seeing her passion and just allowing the team to work through these struggles without overwhelming them with the process and with the expectations shows signs that she's, right now, she's the great hire. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool after the game. The team, they went back to the team hotel. They're all still in uniform, and then they all jump in the pool. And guess who joined them in the pool with his clothes on? Dave Hickey, dressed up in khakis and polo and all, jumps in the pool head first, celebrating going to Oklahoma City.
If by some reason Dave Hickey is listening to this podcast, that was a stiff dive, my man. That was a very stiff dive, man. You got to be loose. I know you're in polos and khakis, but you gotta let those shoulders go. You got to look free.
He's been at several, the swimming events. I mean, I know he's seen Delaney Schnell in person. I'm surprised she hasn't given out some pointers to Dave. But
that was great to see.
Great. That he's there and celebrating that moment. I think when you have an athletic director like that that's just bought in, and
absolutely,
you can see just how much the team is celebrating and enjoying it, and that's what really matters. And then you look at the bracket, and it's really set up for them to make a run. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they win 1 or 2 games, because there's a lot of top ranked teams that fell, and Oklahoma State's number 7, but after that there's nobody else ranked higher than 10 in the bracket they're having.
Well, if you want all the latest coverage on Arizona Wildcats softball in Oklahoma City this week, make sure you go to Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app. PJ Brown, our colleague, will be out there holding it down for us in Oklahoma City. Now moving on to another team that's making the postseason, Alec, U of A baseball. Mm-hmm. We all knew that they were going to make the postseason, but as Michael Lev said in his story, it wasn't guaranteed. And they didn't figure out their postseason fate until about almost 40 minutes into the little television program that they had for the bracket selection. So Arizona, they had to wait a little bit, but they did make it in. They're going to the Coral Gables Regional.
For those that don't know, that's Miami,
Florida.
That was news to me as of 24 hours ago when they made the tournament. I had never heard Miami referred to as Coral Gables.
I was like, oh, they're going to Hawaii.
The U. Okay, there we go.
So Coral Gables is the regional. They'll play Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss was a team that they beat in the Super Regional last year to go to the College World Series. So familiarity there. And then, I mean, the NCAA committee was just probably laughing maniacally when they put this whole thing together, because there was a possibility that Arizona, what's standing in the way between them and a trip to Omaha, is the guy who led them to Omaha in his first season, in Jay Johnson, who's now at LSU. And he took away Jacob Berry from the Wildcats. Yeah. I mean, he pretty much gutted the entire upcoming recruiting class and had them flip over to LSU. So you got Jay Johnson over there at LSU on the other side of the bracket. But Arizona, first and foremost, they need to take care of business. Ole Miss is a damn good team, and you're on the road now. And so let's see what you can do. However, I was encouraged by how they looked in the Pac-12 baseball tournament in Scottsdale, which, by the way, is awesome. I don't know why it took the conference so long to finally put something like this together. Like 25-22 baseball game between UCLA and Oregon State. Like, we need more of that. Felt like your guy Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa were playing.
Appointment television, baby.
It was fun to watch, but I like the way Arizona played in the Pac-12 baseball tournament. Now, however, Chase Davis is dealing with a shoulder injury for running into the wall, trying to did he rob a home run, or
he was trying
did he catch
to?
It?
I don't think he did.
I just saw that he ran into the wall and then messed up his left shoulder.
He caught it. He did catch it.
He did catch it. So he still made the play.
A sac fly.
But still, like, that's tough right there. Yeah. Now, head coach Chip Hale did say that he is going to be available. He's a little banged up, or his status is up in the air, but they are encouraged by what they're seeing out of him. But what do you think about Arizona baseball going into it? Because I know Garrett Irvin got rocked in the Pac-12 baseball tournament by Stanford. Mm-hmm. But, TJ Nichols is a solid pitcher. You got, of course, the star catcher and Daniel Susac, who delivered big time in the Pac-12 tournament. I'm not really sure where this team's at, because you had a good series against Oregon State. You beat the arguably the best team in baseball. Then you get swept on the road the next week by Oregon. But then you put together a decent run. So it's
and they beat Oregon to open up the Pac-12 tournament.
So it's wishy-washy. But if we're going based off what we recently saw, I like Arizona.
I do. I like their chances. I think Miami's a strong team, but Arizona is certainly capable of beating Miami in that regional. I think Ole Miss, teams change from year to year, but there's some familiarity there with Arizona beating them in the Super Regional last year to get to the College World Series. So I think the pitching has to be there for Arizona. But Daniel Susac, man, he's on a tear.
Yeah.
Led Arizona to the win over ASU. He left that game with some stomach problems, but he returned the next game. So he's going to be relied on. Baseball postseason is one of those strange, compared to any other sports, where you could be the best team and still not win, because in a 2-game series where you need 2 wins or 2 losses or you go home, it's very up in the air. Your starting pitcher has a bad game, you're facing elimination the next day. So I think Arizona has a really good chance to get out of this regional. But again, just the inconsistency with this team over the last month gives me a little bit of pause as to, penciling them in as a team that could advance to that super regional.
Michael Lev will be on the road for that. So make sure you follow all of his work on Twitter at Michael J. Lev, at the Wildcaster, and also download the Wildcaster app for free off the App Store and Google Play. All right, Alec. So we got Arizona softball, Arizona baseball, both in the postseason. Yet Arizona basketball still making some news. Last time we did a podcast, Arizona didn't have an Estonian big man by the name of Henry Visar.
That's correct.
Who obviously from Estonia, like I just said, played for Real Madrid's junior club team, averaged 13 points. I mean, he was a double-figure scorer. and he also shot 35% from three. So not only is he a 6'10" big man, but he can shoot that thing too. So you got some versatility in Arizona's front court to team up with Umar Ballo, Azuolas Tubelis, and then, of course, Dylan Anderson, which I think is important to have because we don't know what track Dylan Anderson's on. We don't know if he's like more of the Adama Ball where he's going to get a few minutes here, or if he's going to be Shane Noel and just completely ride the pine the entire season. So to add more depth to the front court, I think was a big addition for Tommy Lloyd and his staff. Before we get to Dalen Terry and what his decision is, what do you think about Henry Visar?
I think it's a really good addition. It's the replacement to Koloko, a big that's more mobile and active on the court. He seems to have good, basketball IQ around the rim, but can also step out, guard the perimeter a little bit, run the floor, and that's really, I think, what's going to help him the most get playing time is because we saw Arizona and their tendency to just absolutely blitz the court when they get up and down in transition. And as much as I love Umar Ballo as a player, like when he just comes in and is just a force in the paint and dunking and blocking shots, he's not a big man that you want to rely on running the court, 30 minutes a game.
Yeah.
He can give you a solid 20 around the rim, do a lot of different things, but I don't know if fits the Arizona up and down style if they want to go small. And so I think, Vesar, he can fit that mold, and if he can step out and shoot from three, man, that's an added bonus. We don't know a whole lot about him. Haven't seen, what he necessarily rates as star-wise. But Jonathan, Gavoni, who does a lot of great work, covering international prospects, said, he's one of the top Estonian international prospects, of the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. So
people are high on this guy.
Yeah, people think he's got real potential.
And the fact that they're so high on them leaves me to think he's actually going to be more of a standout right away than some of these other international guys. Because I remember when Lauri Markkanen committed to Arizona, nobody knew about this guy. It's like, oh, who's this 7-footer from Finland? Oh, interesting. When he first came into Arizona, the expectations, there were none for Lauri Markkanen. No. And then all of a sudden he blows up. It's like, wow, this guy is 7 feet tall and he can shoot 3-pointers like that.
All of a sudden he's a lottery pick.
He's a lottery pick. So I don't know what Henry Visar is going to be, because for every Lauri Markkanen, there's an Omar Tielemans.
Mm-hmm. that never
even touched the court. Did he even make it past the red-blue game?
He did not make it past the red-blue game.
So, exact. I'm very confident in saying that Henry Visar is not Omar Tielemans. This guy is really good, and I think he's going to have a pretty solid role on this upcoming Arizona's team. And I don't know the plan for him, but I like the addition.
I think you have to trust Tommy Lloyd right now, right? He hasn't given anybody, a reason not to trust him for, the recruits he brings in or the guys, his style of play or the international prospects that he got at Gonzaga and developed. So, I think, as for the unknowns that we don't know about Vesar, the knowns that we do know are that Tommy Lloyd is very specific about the international guys he goes after and has a proven track record of developing them. So it could bode well for Arizona.
So what's Dalen Terry going to do?
Question of the day.
It's $1 million question, Alec. I don't know, man, because I saw that you were digging into NBA mock drafts, and it's that time of year where we're constantly refreshing to see where these experts have them going. It seems like Dalen Terry's stock is skyrocketing, while Christian Koloko is really falling.
Yeah,
or kind of. I always thought Christian Koloko was maybe a late first rounder. He's going to go no further than 35. Now I see him going in the 40s and the 50s.
Yeah, it was really weird, especially considering we only see tidbits of some of their workouts, but there was a 50-second clip that was posted the other day of him going through his pro day combine where he's stepping out, shooting threes. There was a drill where he's competing against other players in the draft class, some guards too. And there was a 3-point contest and he had the second best shooting percentage at shooting over 50% from three. during that combine run.
We're talking about Koloko or Terry? Okay.
Koloko.
Okay.
So it was really puzzling to see, Gavoni put him at 42 this morning. I know other sites kind of have him a little higher, but, there's Gavoni at ESPN's, among the most plugged in and at all these events and talking to these GMs and scouts. And so just based on what I've seen the last couple of years when we go through, okay, where are certain Arizona guys going to go? Gavoni seems to be up there in terms of being the most accurate. So that's surprising. But then Terry's stock skyrocketing, not surprising at all. It felt like once teams got him in the gym and they're able to see some of the athleticism and the twitchiness and just the enthusiasm that DT has, that he was going to be, it was just a matter of how high he would start to go on these boards. We knew he was going to be, if not this year, next year, he was certainly going to be an NBA draft pick in the first round. And if a team liked what they saw in his potential this summer, then it becomes a clearer decision. I think he's just waiting on one or two teams to say, hey, we've got a mid to late first round pick. We would, if you're still there, we're going to plan on taking you. I think that's really the determining factor in his decision, is just making sure that there's enough teams that are in love with his skill set, that even if one decides not to draft him, that there's going to be another one waiting.
Yeah. Well, all it takes is one. All it takes is one team to just absolutely fall in love with him. And I was concerned about him not competing in the 5-on-5 drill at the NBA Draft Combine. He didn't actually scrimmage. All he did was do all the different drills and the workouts, and then obviously the measurements. And when you talk about the measurements, I mean, he's got a 7-foot wingspan.
Yeah.
For being a perimeter player. So it's like, man, this guy's got pterodactyl arms.
6'7", but plays like he's 6'9", 6'10".
Yeah. And I always thought that it was going to negatively impact his stock. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, man, so he comes in, he's got this infectious personality. He's smiling. He's getting everybody involved in the drills, in the workouts. I mean, you could see it right there. He's a glue guy. And people can watch his tape. I mean, they see what he did at Arizona. But then there's always the leaving room for imagination. Oh, we didn't actually see him go 5-on-5 in the NBA Draft Combine. What is this player like? We didn't actually see him go up against the best players in the class.
Right.
How good is this guy? But then you see him being the glue guy at Arizona.
Yeah,
and Tommy
just turn on the last month of Arizona film. He was the second best player.
And just being great. Now, when I look at Dalen Terry, my only knock on him was that it felt like all of his points came on like fast breaks, like open court, getting to the rim and dunking. But then I also look at against the second round opponent, TCU, where he actually hit that corner 3-pointer late in the game that either tied it or brought Arizona back to one possession. So he can hit timely shots when he wants to. I just need to see more on a consistent basis. And that's why I always thought it was a guaranteed he was coming back to Arizona. But again, look at you, like what you said, turn on the last month of Arizona season, and then you look at what he did in the workouts. You look at the measurements, and then you don't scrimmage in the 5-on-5 drill, so you leave room for imagination, and you leave one scout, somebody who's going to leave that combine like, man, I really like that Terry kid. Maybe he is worth taking at number 28. And the second you tell him that you're going to number 28 overall, if you're still there, which he is, then Dalen Terry's gone.
Yeah, so ESPN has him at 27 to the Miami Heat, #Heat culture.
Oh, my God. Pat Riley's going to fall in love with this guy.
Yeah.
Eric Spoelstra's going to love this guy.
28, Golden State Warriors. The Warriors love just infectious basketball players that have a passion for the game.
Iguodala would bring him in and take him under his wing.
Yep. So 2 really potentially great spots for Terry. But the flip side of that, man, if he chose to return, there's only a handful of guys in college basketball that would be better than Dalen Terry next year.
Yeah. And then at that point, we're talking about a starting lineup of Kerr Kriisa, Pelle Larsson, Dalen Terry, Azuolas Tubelis, and Oumar Ballo.
Yep.
That's a
squad.
That's a top 10 lineup for sure.
Yeah.
But even if Dalen Terry doesn't come back, I mean, you still have Adama Ball, but still, like, it's Dalen Terry. Mm-hmm. This is one of the best players in college basketball. So he's got a big decision to make.
It is, and we'll hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, I know Justin's going to get it up fairly quick here, so we can have the lifespan of it. But like.
That's Alex. That's Alex's way of saying, Justin, you better upload this or else.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. No, but I think what we don't want ruined is for it to come out in the next 10 minutes that Terry's going to stay or go.
Yeah.
Anyway, it very well could happen, but it's nice to go through this conversationally just to look at the pros and cons before it actually happens, because it's a big decision. It's
absolutely
he's making a career decision, and I don't think either choice is going to be wrong for Dalen Terry.
Absolutely. And then you come back to Arizona, you rake up a bunch of NIL money. At the end of the day,
you get your own ice cream flavor.
Dalen Terry's making money regardless of what he does.
Yeah.
You can't hate on the kid for that. All right. So we'll figure out what Dalen Terry's going to do. That's going to happen this week. We'll see. But speaking of NBA Finals between the Golden State Warriors and now the Boston Celtics. Golden State's back. This is the 6th finals that they've made in the last 8 years. Chalk it up. It's a dynasty. But there's a strong Lute Olson presence in this year's NBA Finals once again, because on the Golden State Warriors side, you got the usual suspects, Steve Kerr, Bruce Frazier, and Andre Iguodala. Then on the Boston Celtics side, as the assistant coach, you have Damon Stoudemire, who some, and by some I mean myself, would say that he is the second best player in program history behind Sean Elliott. Because Damon Stoudemire was that dude when he was at Arizona. Now he's a coach. An interesting coaching path for Damon Stoudemire was an assistant in college, then was a head coach at the University of Pacific, and then now is an assistant under Ime Udoka in Boston. And I think it's cool that, you have 4 Lute Olson era Wildcats in the year 2022, all competing against each other in the NBA Finals. And it's just, you talk about heat culture. There's such thing as Lute culture, and it's alive and well. And it goes beyond just basketball too. Like, you got Harvey Mason, who's now head of the Grammys, who's head of the Recording Academy. You have Kenny Lofton going on to do big things as a baseball player. I mean, so many people have gone on to do great things in life. And then in the coaching realm, I mean, you got Luke Walton, you got Jason Terry, you got Steve Kerr, obviously. Like, there's Lute culture is something to behold. And I think it's so cool that here it is in 2022, we're talking about 4 Lute guys being in the finals.
Yeah, and, as much as we want to make it out to be, everybody loves the players. Like Steph Curry, this is a big, legacy series for him. Klay Thompson, Draymond. Like Steve Kerr, if he gets another NBA championship, like you got to start putting, he only elevates himself as an all-time NBA coach.
Well, think about this. This is his 11th trip to the finals, both as a player and as a coach.
Yeah.
He's 8-2. Those 2 losses being against the 16 Cavaliers and then the 19 Raptors. So he's won with the Bulls, won with the Spurs, now he's won with the Warriors.
And to go through, that rebuilding process, because, the Warriors were the worst team in the league 2 years ago. We're not that far removed from them just being an absolute devastation of a franchise. Curry hurt, Clay hurt.
They had the number 2 pick in the draft.
Yeah. So I think it's really cool to see the job that Steve Kerr has done, with that team just over the last couple of years, and doing it the right way too, right? Not trading the entire franchise. No offense, Laker guy over there, but not trading, all your picks and your culture for one guy.
Yeah.
So it's just the ultimate tip of the cap to Steve Kerr, who's been patient, been developing players, and now Golden State, all of a sudden, here they are again.
I think it's funny that the NBA Finals features 2 teams that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving previously played for.
And left.
On
their own volition.
To go win some games. It's like, man, It's a good time though. But you got NBA Finals: Damon Stoudemire, Steve Kerr, Bruce Frazier, Andre Iguodala.
What's your pick?
Warriors in 6.
Okay.
And I say that Game 6, we're going to see Game 6 Klay Thompson go for 45 points.
Wow.
We're going to see like an absolute clinic from Klay Thompson.
Does he steal the MVP from Curry?
Just saying.
I've got Warriors in 7.
Warriors at 7.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I like the Warriors. I think they have a better team. I do like Jason Tatum a lot. I think he's a great player. But the Warriors are just too experienced. They've been here before. They know how to win an NBA Finals game. Speaking of which, I mean, we brought up Klay Thompson, Washington State, former Washington State basketball player, Jaylen Brown for the Boston Celtics, played at Cal. There's a strong Conference of Champions presence in the NBA Finals. All right, well, that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the Wildcast on Apple, Spotify, or other podcasting platforms. Be sure to download the Wildcaster app for free off the App Store and Google Play. We got tons of content coming your way. Arizona baseball, Arizona softball, of course, Arizona basketball off season. We've got Arizona football. This is a big time for football recruiting. I expect a lot of commits to come here in the next month or so. So please monitor everything Arizona Wildcats related on the Wildcaster app. And also want to plug in our colleague Greg Hansen. He's got a great summer series on the way. Last year, he wrote about the top 100 sports figures in Tucson history. Now, for a second straight year, Greg Hansen is writing 100 consecutive days. 100 consecutive days this summer because now he's doing the top 100 sports teams in Tucson history. So it's a great series.
That's like an impossible project.
How do you, like the first number 100 was like the Tucson Cowboys, a 1953 baseball team, and I'm like, how the hell do you know this stuff? I'm from Tucson. And we're both from Tucson, and we don't know these things. So Greg Hansen's an encyclopedia on all things Tucson sports. So check out his summer series, and you can do so by going to Tucson.com. Thanks for listening.